How long is this going? No. Oops. The fridge on the fridge on. That on. What about this? Righty. Chapter 5. What's the difference of all? Maybe. Yeah, where's all finds it right there. Read about those. Since I have one, that's it. Anyway, chapter 5. A subconscious has been hijacked. Inescapable change is a gift that can free the mind of unwelcome subconscious habit. From the macro level of the previous millennium to the micro level today, the evolutionary transformation is penetrating every level of life, urging us to wake up and escape the grip of robotic training. Our mind was not designed to act purely from habit, a slave to ego repetition, asleep to dynamic creation. Its ultimate purpose is to imagine new possibilities and transform subjective thought into objective reality by doing and observing with faith. Realization that we're part of the light from which everything is conceived is the only way to reveal our innate creative power. Still today, we are compared, judged, and rated, convincing us that our value is synonymous with performance. While we're captured by this ego-focused system that subconsciously consumes our life, we'll never be spiritually satisfied. Inevitably, we realize on our deathbed, a minority before, that soon after birth, we're sold a lemon by someone older, wiser, and more powerful, and who sees our life as their own. Our subconscious mind is a very efficient programmable tool available to help us adapt and shape our physical environment to our individual needs. For example, consider wood. If we learn to shape it by developing the physical skill to carve intricate, beautiful pieces through repetition and continuous refinement, eventually we become a sought-after carver, an artisan of wood. Development of neuronal pathways in the brain, strengthened by repetition, makes our relationship to the physical world easier. In time, They enable automatic actions, relieving our mind to attend to other matters simultaneously. Once learned, they're never forgotten, just like riding a bike. I believe this is the intended purpose of the subconscious. Our ability to choose and create personalized instinctive habits provides us with a commanding survival advantage, allowing us to learn and master complex physical skills. For example, driving a car. The subconscious, through repetition, takes an idea or activity and embeds it as part of the essential being as a habit, an energy-efficient, learned instinct. Simple examples include daily activities like cleaning teeth, going to the gym, or practicing a daily yoga flow. Once these tasks become part of our routine, they are impossible to avoid, taking on a life of their own, nagging us until they're done, and leaving us feeling guilty if we don't. We can visualize the habit process as a flow chart listing the sequential steps to reach the desired outcome. Repeated again and again, these steps become physical pathways expressed as the seamless cooperation between chemically connected neurons and muscles. Through a similar process, repetition of thought concerning our unique interpretation of events leads to belief that the body and ego are synonymous. We treat interpersonal feedback as if it is equivalent to the objective feedback loop essential to developing habitual physical skills, setting in place unique character habits. What began as a fluid, infinitely plastic and adaptable being, unconstrained by belief, becomes through repetition of suggestions, molded by beliefs, into a fixed identity, seemingly set like stone. Forming our identity like this worked in a world that remained relatively unchanged for millennia. Developing societies relied and benefited from tribes with refined physical skills, taming harsh environments for the greater good of all. Our ancestors developed survival skills by trial and error, making life or death decisions which ensured their longevity and generational succession. Through iteration, our essential nature developed along a natural and predictable path, taking the form of an intergenerational survival mechanism, otherwise known as evolution, or survival of the fittest. Surnames reflected the skills that helped the entire tribe to thrive. For example, Smith, Cooper, Potter, and Mason, to name a few. Although endowed with the Holy Grail, the ability to consciously choose our response to every situation, for centuries pragmatic necessity meant our societies trained us to act instinctively. Our reaction to external stimulus programmed in accordance with generalized survival habits or instincts. Our essential side emphasized to the detriment of the existential. From birth, personalized ego formation of the identity or avatar, recognized as our Christian name, starts in earnest. Existing ego habits are progressively formed and reinforced through repetition of both internal and external instruction, with the goal of achieving certainty of response with the least amount of energy. This ensures perceived threats are met with a relatively consistent, spontaneous reaction, maximizing survival. Before long, our identity is operating on autopilot, outside conscious awareness, reflecting the beliefs formed from decisions made from our interpretation of the emotionally significant events we experienced as children. This satisfied the perceived greater good of the tribe, ensuring its survival, appropriate if you're an animal lacking creative potential, longevity being dependent on instinct. This was true of man for millennia. Necessity limited the scope to break out of our career, town, or society. Survival depended on learning essential skills, habitually repeated until we keeled over. Today, while our potential experiences are overwhelming compared to the past, they seldom relate to life and death. In under a century, we've moved from a life with limited options to almost limitless. Movies like The Bucket List leave us with the impression that a successful life is measured by the number of foreign shores visited and the experiences and material possessions we spend every living moment accumulating. Our mind is still held captive through the suggestion of others who subtly prod us to do what they want while belittling and taking for granted the safety and security into which we're born, thanks to those before us. Despite this remarkable shift, we persist in teaching our children to function as if they're a computer. In their formative years, we program them with a culturally imposed operating system, an expectation that it will remain relevant throughout their life. This learning approach ignores the brain's connection to an infinitely evolving intelligence. Our subconscious is not designed to perform as the operating system, but as an application running on top of the operating system, enabling us to adjust and train our bodies to master the physical world. An analogy is Microsoft Word, an application running on macOS or Windows. When the operating system environment changes, the app must also change via an upgrade to remain compatible. The old pragmatic way of teaching served us well, enabling mankind to adapt and prosper. But now we need a better way. So far, the education system has only achieved stage 2 of Goldstein and Maslow's 5-stage theory of self-actualization, the basic needs. Continued collective prosperity needs us to claim more, requiring an evolution of teaching methods. It's time to emphasize the existential or subjective nature of our mind and its connection to the universe, source, or God, the operating system of which we are all part. Some in the know already harness this ability to their advantage. Through time, the few who recognize the unique human ability to create from within, who knew that a thought conceived and believed will be achieved, exploited those who didn't. This law, recognized by religion and the aristocracy, offered an opportunity to influence and even control people through the subconscious programming of their suggestible ego. For example, stage hypnotists convince willing adults that they're eating a tasty apple, even though it's an onion. Unsurprisingly, elites use programming techniques unrivaled in their simplicity to influence children's identity development. This gives them a competitive advantage that allows them to control and manipulate the skills and thinking of future generations, for good or otherwise. This overt indoctrination process successfully develops teams of people who can be directed to work in areas society believes will benefit most from its view of the contemporary common good. This pragmatic approach to achieving meaningful change focuses massive muscle power and, more recently, massive brain power. Used unscrupulously, it deceives populations into compliance, directing them in tribes like pack-hunting animals, operating as if by instinct rather than free will. An example is Hitler Youth, a World War II group designed to indoctrinate children into Hitler's ideology, such that they would eventually be willing to sacrifice themselves for the sake of the motherland. Recall this was written before COVID-19. Even in advanced economies today, this suggestible quality of the human brain is abused. By instilling a program that sets the individual up to be dependent on his or her past response and bound by their self-image, wealth is channeled from mass production into the deep pockets of controlling elites. This self-image is constructed by chance during our early years of total dependency and based on our interpretation of the opinions and means shared by our peers and elders. Once upon a time, developing populations of static victims worked. The slow pace of change made it practical. Replacing them with newer, upgraded models via mass education of subsequent generations was more efficient than retraining the old. As Jason Isbell and Bradley Cooper say in their lyrics for Maybe It's Time, from the movie A Star Is Born, it takes a lot to change man. Hell, it takes a lot to try. Unfortunately, centrally coordinated training has left most under the impression that they're unable to meaningfully change their behaviour. It's just the way I was born. I can't change who I am. Disempowered by this learned thinking habit, we struggle to cope in an increasingly foreign environment that requires constant adaptation and development of not only new, but also previously inconceivable skills. Oh, I think that went through without too many mistakes or missed words. We'll take that for the time being. Shall I end the stream or shall I keep going? Chapter 6. Well, I'm on a roll. Chapter 6. Sign that I am defined. That's good. I wonder if I'm close enough. It'll be useful later on. Not bad for running off one vocal cord. So no one can tell me why. Which doesn't surprise me in the least. Right. Got a bit of result, maybe. If anyone knows how to pause these things, so I don't have to stay live forever. Looks to me, once you're live, you're live. The pause button. Not as though I'm giving a lecture. So I wouldn't be shortchanging if I was pausing it. It's just a means to an end, really. In the stream. No, I guess I can leave it going and come back. Okay, we'll take a short break. I'm going to get a drink of water or a coffee or something, and I'll be back soon. Nah, just joking. Actually, I wonder if I could Facebook it live at the same time. That wouldn't be bad, would it? A bit of fun. Yeah, a bit of fun. This is wise or unwise. Right, where was I? That's good. Massive audience, so let's get started. Chapter 6. In chapter 5. Yep. Chapter 6. So I am that, I am defined. Let's just Chapter 6. So I am that, I am defined. Comprehend the meaning of I am that, I am, and you understand their role as creators in total control of their destiny and freed from the fear, worry, and anxiety that arise from feeling unworthy and believing that our that I am is insignificant compared to others. If we understand this, then we accept that we've always created our own experience and unwittingly been complicit in playing life's victim. Realizing we're all independent creators releases us from the pressure to measure up to contemporary standards of success. We become self-directed, motivated by our own goals and dreams, no matter how big or small, and appreciate that we're born equal under the stars, free to choose our own path. Meeting life any other way means we're controlled by others' values and create what they want with our life that's creative energy captured in their vision. How can this simple phrase, so I am that, I am, help you break free from the childhood programming controlling your present reality? So I am that, I am, is a practical revision of, in my opinion, the misinterpreted book of Exodus 3:14 phrase, I am that I am. A simple comma added after that dramatically changes the phrase's emphasis, revealing a new approach to life described by the semantics of I am, that, abbreviated to so I am that, with so being an acronym for semantics of. This simple edit provides a clue to how to consciously and continually use your limitless, existential creative nature to control and define your life experience, to assume the role of driver rather than passenger asleep in the back seat. Leaving out the comma gives I am that I am a significantly different meaning, implying that we are conscious because we're aware of our individuality. We recognize who and what we see in the mirror as the self who has our name. Well, I am that, I am, implies that we're conscious when we realize we're one with what we observe. The hidden power of mankind is in the ability to consciously create a self or ego bearing our Christian name. We can construct self around the repetition of intentional observations and thoughts arising from our observations, say an area of interest or passion. Because we're inseparable from that on which our awareness is focused right now, we are the thing. This ability is always available. Objectively, we are what we perceive through every one of our senses, and we choose our experience by free will. Hear that plane flying nearby. Hear it fully, conscious of its presence, and you, in that moment, become part of it, and that part of you. Stay in that awareness for long as you can remain alive. Hear that plane fly nearby. Hear it fully, conscious of its presence, and you, in that moment, become part of it, and it part of you. Stay in that awareness for as long as you can remain one with the moment. If you lose awareness, you'll drift off into another dream or wish of the ego illusion. Awareness followed up with repeated intentional thought is the formula that will manifest the thing. With this creative method, we can take what we love from observation and become it, taking it wherever we go. This is how we created ourselves. The ego carrying our Christian name is just as much a thing as that tree in our garden. But unlike the tree, we can reimagine it into something different. Get in the game, learn to play with eyes wide open. Immerse yourself in sensual moments, your real now, and embrace our gift of being conscious of objective form. When you fill that jug with water for your cup of coffee or tea, listen to the water, feel it take you over, experience all that it is. Its smell, sound, feel, taste, flow. Stop being distracted, living in make-believe mind stories, lost in Neverland while things happened unnoticed around you. Cast attention on the butterfly that just fluttered by or the bird soaring above, and realize that we're one with where our attention goes. Placing our awareness onto our physical environment, be conscious of the object of our attention, or that, and I am that, I am, is in that butterfly. I need to get that right. Get in the game. Get in the game. Play. Get in the game. Learn to play with eyes wide open. Immerse yourself in sensual moments, your real now. Embrace our gift of being conscious of objective form. When you fill that jug with water for your cup of coffee or tea, listen to the water. Feel it take you over. Experience all that it is. Its smell, sound, feel, taste, flow. Stop being distracted, living in make-believe mind stories, lost in Neverland while things happen unnoticed around you. Cast attention on the butterfly that just fluttered by or the bird soaring above, and realize that we're one with where our attention goes. Placing our awareness onto our physical environment, to be conscious of the object of our attention, or that, and I am that, I am, as in that being the butterfly, releases us from the incessant unconscious thoughts that capture us in memories or future dreams, both parts of the unreal. This is how to escape feelings of fear and anxiety. Meditation unpacked. No need for expensive courses or gurus. Meditation is not complicated doing thing. It's just mired and mysterious and exclusive marketing speak. Under our normal setting, a never-ending stream of thought competes for our attention. It flows continuously like a river, approaching here, then gone, with each independent thought labelled in our native language. Because semantics is everything, if our language or vocabulary is limited by a lack of educational opportunities, so is the richness of our life experience. The semantics of I am means that the greater our vocabulary, the more precise we are as a creator. Just as an artist can produce an infinite array of new colours from primary ones to create a unique masterpiece, we can do the same with mastery of language. The nature of thought means that those managing education and language control the collective and individual potential of societies. We engage our creative power whenever we're conscious of this moment, the I am that, I am, rather than dwelling in some unconscious past, future story, or dream state created by the habitual or subconscious mind, the I am that I am. Realize this and we assume complete control over our life's trajectory. We're no longer a spectator spellbound by the past or the future, owned by the illusory dimensions of time which consume our life. Being conscious of this moment gives us conscious control to harness the power of the moment, in the same way use this power to master the art of driving a car or riding a bike. In this fully present state of consciousness, we become seamlessly connected to the eternally expanding universe, one with it. The semantics of I am releases us from the limited objective ego, I am, which is bound by the beliefs we chose to be part of our I am since emerging into the world. Our absolute dependence on our carers left us no choice but to blindly accept all input from our environment. This began the construction of the I am ego, illusion in earnest. An ego represents belief in a limited objective self and the source of all future suffering. Ironically, those we love most reinforced this illusory self, and they gave us our name as a proxy for that, and I am that. We became it, answering it to it, like one of Pavlov's dogs. Practically, we see how the ego assumes our life experience. Survival requires interaction with others. This inevitably leads to comparison. Some we initiated, and others initiated by society's contemporary value systems, predominantly economic. By trial and error, community leaders design measures they judge to be of value to the stability and progress of the broader system. One constant, though, is that they all seem to be adept at labelling us as good or bad, better or worse, useful or useless, bright or dull, and so on when compared to our peers. Yet in the words of Theodore Roosevelt, comparison is the thief of joy. The unintended outcome of the system is to train us at an early age to accept comparative evaluation as the success standard. As soon as an elephant is born into the circus, it's tethered to a small stake by an insignificant rope. At first, the elephant calf struggles and pulls to loosen its bindings, but unable to break free, it eventually gives up. Even as an adult, the same insignificant stake is all that's needed. An illusion masquerading as a rope now captures the elephant. Its limited but unnoticed habits formed in the past, rather than responding to the reality which is only seen after waking to now. The I am that, I am. We're trained to be just like the circus elephant, progressively conditioned by conforming to our early life experiences, and with our emotional well-being tethered to society's systemic and institutionalized standards of comparison. We're raised in a system that presents us with conclusive, objective evidence that scholastic performance accurately reflects our worth and determines whether we'll be a productive member of society or a burden to be carried by those adjudged more capable. Standards, while arbitrary, motivate us to strive towards society's ideal and to achieve recognised benchmarks along the way. For example, home ownership, which show we're on the right path to achieving ultimate success. These future-focused benchmarks guilt us to achieve more by trying harder. Nasty. Standards, while arbitrary, motivate us. Standards, while arbitrary, motivate us to strive towards society's ideal and to achieve recognised benchmarks along the way. For example, home ownership, which show we're on the right path to achieving ultimate success. These future-focused benchmarks guilt us to achieve more by trying harder. A feeling of accomplishment, self-sufficiency and fulfillment is the implied future reward. Unfortunately, this competitive process, accepted as a natural part of life, dooms the majority to a futile, never-ending race to an unfulfilling end. The promise that life will be better when the future arrives is as much an illusion of the ego as the past. The adult ego is on a pre-programmed journey, always seeking to become an objectively dominant I am that I am. It has an insatiable desire for more money, power and status. The implied program mantra is more, seen as more accomplished, more worthy, and even more immortalized. This programming sentences us to live our life in the unreal, stuck in the state of imagination, removed from the grace and beauty in which the universe wants us to share, not by forcing or striving, but simply by being. Objective achievement is not the goal, it's the byproduct of being one with and accepting every unfolding experience, and met in faith rather than resistance. Our education only reveals part of the picture, leaving us shortchanged by the grand lie. Because our pragmatic education system is designed around the greater good, it's easy to understand why performance feedback received in our formative years is interpreted as hard evidence of our ability and potential to succeed. The nature of the standardized comparative testing means that most of us will end up believing our ability is average or below. From a practical standpoint of service delivery, the system is adequate, but by definition, it cannot deliver excellence. Mass education is a financially efficient means of transferring the minimum required level of communication skills which allow us to survive and coexist in a functioning economy. However, an objective life is far more than a function of the economy. After all, money won't buy you happiness. Ego has no room for the subjective. To seamlessly rule our life, it must break down every event to an objective cause and effect. It decides that you are or you are not, just as computers are coded in ones and zeros. Shades of grey are not tolerated. This either-or feedback system works well in mastering automatically performed physical tasks, but not so well when it leads to the formation of habitual personality responses. Whether the instantaneous response to a stimulus is anger, sadness, despondency or joy depends on the dominant early experience. For example, early on they teach us that performance assessments ego has the room. You wonder what I'm doing. This is a raw narration, so they'll have to go through everything. And what I guess the idea of the videos is just to show the process, show that makes you cough. Ego has no room. Anyway, keep running right to the right. If it works, that's fine. If it doesn't, well, that's fine too. Live by your own philosophies, that's what I say. Okay, my massive audience, you're in for a treat today. Let's see if we can do this without coughing. Ego has no room for the subjective. To seamlessly rule our life, it must break down every event to an objective cause and effect. It decides that you are or you're not. Just as computers are coded in ones and zeros, shades of grey are not tolerated. This either-or feedback system works well in mastering automatically performed physical tasks, but not so well when it leads to the formation of habitual personality response. Whether the instantaneous response to a stimulus is anger, sadness, despondency, or joy depends on the dominant early experience. For example, early on they teach us that performance assessments provide a critical benchmark to future potential. So if we continually fall below the benchmark, we naturally form the belief that, when compared to our peers, we're less than, we're done. Rating children against social educational benchmarks that are subjectively selected is a disincentive to achievement and detrimental to human progress. Children who consistently score below average naturally form an enduring low opinion of not only their ability, but also themselves, believing the two are linked. Even well-meaning performance feedback from those within our sphere of influence reinforces our unflattering self-assessment. By the time we're early teens, our self-constructed life model is our operating ego, a reflection of and a window into the emotional events we experienced throughout childhood. Yet these were mostly unrelated random events over which we had little or no control. The probability of transcending the objectified you is low unless we're aware of you or personal construct ego creation process. Well, that was a mess. The probability of transcending the objectified you is low unless we're aware of the you or personal construct creation process. Being oblivious to the constructed personality is the source of our relentless damning self-opinion. It's rare to escape the hypnotic grasp of the apparently seamless ego without external intervention. Some shocking, perspective-changing life event is usually needed to reveal the ego illusion. Bandler and Grinder, the fathers of neuro-linguistic programming, in their acclaimed book Reframing, called this pattern interrupt. The shocking event or events jolt us from our learned habitual pattern of thought, where a trigger action guarantees a consistent but maladaptive response. With a pattern interrupt, we get a trigger, pause, awareness. Tip: the moment of I am that, I don't want to be, I am. opening a gap of opportunity to break the old unhelpful thought pattern so we can replace it with a new and better reaction. This new awareness begins the process of taking back control from the ego. Noticing, then changing your reaction to a new, progressive response is rare because the ego illusion of you is entrenched through unconscious repetition. Hence the strong opinions for and against the question, can you teach an old dog new tricks? For those experiencing effortless success congruent with their self-view, everything they touch turns to gold, and all feedback from the material world combines to stroke their ego. This is certainly true. Why change what isn't broken? Matthew verse 19:24 explains this idea as a parable. And again, I say unto you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. Though this doesn't make you immune to visit from the black dog of depression, for example, an athlete who is idolized by a captive audience of excited fans has a higher probability of experiencing depression once his or her athletic career ends. Boxing legend Sugar Ray Leonard famously said, "Nothing could satisfy me outside the ring. There is nothing in life that can compare to becoming a world champion, having your hand raised in that moment of glory with thousands, millions of people cheering you on." To overcome extreme bouts of depression, Sugar Ray made repeated comebacks, attempting to affirm an identity that now existed only as a fading memory. After retiring, the achievements of famous sports people are dispatched to history, collecting dust in the back issues of the Guinness Book of Records, while their new economic reality forces them to reinvent their identity, learning new skills, while enjoying significantly less influence. Beverly and Grove noted that changes in athletic identity were found to be significant determinants of adjustment for athletes upon career termination. Individuals with a high athletic identity at the time of retirement were more likely to experience a higher degree of emotional adjustment difficulties because of a profound sense of loss in their lives after putting their competing days behind them. The developed world's existing education system focuses on learning styles that maximize productivity and value to a capitalist economy while failing to educate us about our infinite mind potential, let alone how to harness the inexhaustible superpowers of conscious creation. This educational shortcoming blinds us to our godlike subjective creation skills, leaving us a servant to our ego mind. Understanding this is a doorway to assessing and utilizing Understanding this is the doorway to assessing twice. Understanding this is the doorway to accessing and utilizing our infinite potential. Until recently, responsibility for spiritual belief values education lay with the family because parents are most likely to have their children's best interests at heart. Typically, parents, aware that the teachings of the wisdom traditions contain valuable keys for living a fruitful life, entrusted this training to their faith of choice. Unfortunately, however, their fear-based teaching approach failed naive congregations. Now that Western religious networks have less influence, awareness of the need to nurture and understand our existential nature has been lost. This assists a surge in political and corporate evangelism that exploits our spiritual poverty via popular social policy indoctrination, which is influenced by contemporary political beliefs. Politics became just another dangerous, ego-fueled religion that mines and molds plastic minds to its intended way of thinking. Exploitation of young, fertile minds by anyone with the access and will is an established abuse of power that must be called out. Children must be educated to understand that personal power and self-love are their birthrights, and a sense of well-being is not something assigned by another, particularly not by those who believe that their inherited sense of power gives them the right to exploit the defenseless child mind in order to enforce their worldview and make the child comply with their version of right and wrong. In a tweet, the Dalai Lama said, Modern education is premised strongly on materialistic values. It is vital that when educating our children's brains that we do not neglect to educate their hearts, a key element of which has to be nurturing of our compassionate nature. Historically, poor individual outcomes result when the politicised state or religious denominations dominate egoistic or existential nature training. Inevitably, the temptation to consolidate their power and wealth by influencing collective behaviour through the syllabus is irresistible. Any group who seeks to radicalise children by discrete indoctrination aims to appropriate their power. Eventually they form, with the help from politicians' most powerful weapon, the passage of time, an army of like-thinking disciples who can realise the governing group's vision, whether benign or malignant. Almost all of us are vulnerable to coordinated suggestions because we're unaware that thinking processes are habitual, predictable, and dependent on the society in which we were raised. This homogenous curriculum-driven education system fails at least half its students. It deliberately pits us against our peers, openly ignoring children's healthy long-term development and an obvious expression of Darwinism. In this environment, there are three broad outcomes. 1. Success feeds further successes. 2. Mediocre performance encourages approval-seeking, fear of failure, judgment, and perfectionism. Or 3. Consistent failure leads to despondency, anger, and eventually disengagement. A 2002 research paper published by Jennifer Crocker, a psychologist at the University of Michigan's Institute for Social Research, shows up to 80% of students base their self-worth on academic performance. The study also found that adolescents with low self-esteem reported more stress, anger, academic problems, relationship conflicts, and had higher levels of drug and alcohol use and symptoms of eating disorders. Today, it would be difficult to design a better system to cause endemic anxiety in young adults. Little wonder we spend a lifetime building an impenetrable emotional wall to hide behind, believing our perceived deficiencies are fixed personality traits that would damage our chance of success if the truth got out. Hell, our educators told us they were, so what chance do we have of discovering the truth? Awake to this process and you'll be on your way to designing your own life rather than being destined by central design to consume your vital energy in accomplishing another's life mission. Who you think you are is a habit of repetitive thought conditioning, in the same way that walking is learned by unrelenting repetition. While our subconscious habit of walking on two legs is a skill learned with accurate, unbiased, and objective feedback, effortlessly keeping us upright for a lifetime, the same can't be said about our ego habit. Learned values and beliefs, personified through our ego, are a snapshot in time of the dominant cultural view at the time we were educated. However, beliefs and values aren't static. They change with new discoveries and shifting public attitudes. Widely held beliefs that once represented foundational community ideals and taught within the standardized school curriculum are now no longer appropriate. Unfortunately, involuntarily learned childhood beliefs are for all practical purposes hardwired, a seamless part of their identity. It's tough to change as it is for a smoker to quit their habit. And yet contemporary leadership condemns, vilifies and discriminates against previous cohorts for holding on to beliefs sponsored by their predecessors. This is life experience, and the enduring presence of the generation gap is assured in standardized education system that conditions rather than guides individual ego development. For so long as we believe that the source of our power comes from our cultural education, our lives will continue to be compromised, as man's counsel has always proved to be opportunistic and inconsistent. Only after we recognise that the true source of personal power radiates from our inner subjective nature will we design a value system based on independent critical analysis, rather than political dogma, science, or trending pop culture. Progressive inclusive society must teach everyone capable of understanding the process of critical thinking that we're not defined by narrowly focused comparative performance tests. We're greater than that. When developmentally appropriate, we must nurture our intrinsic creative capacity to forge a unique path in the world. Parents can play their part by taking back responsibility for their children's spiritual training and empower them to take control of their mental development and well-being at an early age. This needs to be done with a healthy symbiotic approach that recognises our individual equality rather than the destructive, aggressive and parasitic winner-takes-all approach favoured today. It is bloody hard on your lungs in your solar plexus. Certainly a workout. I don't know if it helps standing, but that's all for today. Massive audience. Massive.
Fucking stupid. Right.